It's not going to be your typical funeral. For all of you that have known Chris and Misty, they love the party. Chris never liked dwelling on the negativity or on the emotional side. If you tell Chris a sob story, he'll be done in about 2 or 3 minutes and said, well, what's next? Or is there a bottle in the fridge? Or there's a cheese platter nearby, let's get together. That was really, Chris and Misty lived life to the fullest. And there was a picture that Chris and Misty have sent us on their last flight on their little aeroplane that they flew to have their dinner. And they had the biggest smile on their face. And Misty's note down underneath was, I've never seen Christians so happy in my life. And that's the last memory I'd really love to hang on to. Laura and I had dinner with Chris and Misty just before Thanksgiving, and had a wonderful time thinking about, we weren't going to catch up for Christmas. We were coming to Australia. They were going to Whistler to ski. And Laura was searching like mad to try to find the right present for them for Christmas, and we couldn't find quite the right present. So we found a dog sled tour on Whistler. It was sold out. We found something else that was sold out. Then we found a helicopter ride that would have taken them to the top of the mountain, to the glacier, and that was the present we gave them, and they were so excited. And I remember Lily was jumping out of her skin, saying, I've never been in a helicopter before. I just can't wait for Christmas so I could get in the helicopter. And we talked about a whole bunch of stuff, and life was pretty full. They were looking forward to many happy events. And I remember Lily at the end of the dinner giving me a hug. And my daughter Beck, which is here present, used to give me the biggest hugs till she got to about 12. Then they became adult hugs, 2 or 3 seconds. And Lily gave me this hug that lasted for like a minute or two, and she said, this is for Thanksgiving, because we want to see you for Thanksgiving. And this one is for your trip to Australia. And this one is for Christmas. And this one's for the helicopter trip. And she just wouldn't let go. And after she finished, she gave me just another hug for the sake of it. And Lily just had the same gift as her father. She just knew how to win somebody's heart. She was warm, full of life. And that's the last memory I have with being with the family at the time. And today you will hear many, many wonderful stories about this amazing family that we've all been blessed with. But first, just some housekeeping. First, I'd like to thank Greg and Helen for providing this beautiful venue. It's 31 degrees here, so it is a little bit warm. So there's water outside. There is bathroom for the ladies on the venue. There are portable toilets for the men outside. If you have children, please look after them, because we're televising the event together. And finally, if you could just make sure your telephones are on flight mode and silent, so there's no interruption. And I'll introduce Jude, as Christian would call her, Lady Duff, to do a reading for us.
The Dash by Linda Ellis. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke the following date with tears, but said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time they spent alive on earth. And now only those who loved them know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we lived and loved and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real, and always try to understand the way other people feel. To be less quick to anger and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives. Like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So, when your eulogy is being read with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you lived your dash?
Pen is Misty's mum. She wrote a beautiful poem and a few words, and Christine is Misty's auntie. That Misty and Chris had incredible respect for her service as a nun in Africa, and I heard many, many stories about them. They are both sorry they couldn't be here with us. They're really struggling with the incredible grief. But Misty has been a really good friend with Amy. The kids have slept over each other's house. Amy had slept over Misty's place many, many times. Kids had wonderful times together. And so Amy, followed by Nathan, will share both of what Pen and Christina have shared.
The day Misty died, I became somebody new, a totally different person, someone I never knew. I'm not who I used to be. I'm definitely not the same. The only thing that hasn't changed is the spelling of my name. The more I cry, more than I ever have, I break down quite a lot. My heart hurts every day. The pain will never stop. Misty, my one and only child, our love was like none other. Now that you're no longer here, I'm a broken and grieving mother. Despite the brokenness and grief, and knowing you're apart, the gift of precious Harper will help to fill our hearts.
As Dan mentioned, this is a personal prayer from Misty's mama Pen, written by Christine, Misty's aunt. Gracious God, whose love and peace surpass all understanding, we come together to remember and give thanks for the lives of Christian, Misty, and Lily. As we mourn their untimely deaths, we know that they have been freed from all pain and are secure in your boundless love. Bless the families of Christian, Misty, and Lily. Give them peace, comfort, and the strength that they need, especially at this time as they entrust their loved ones to you. We seem to give them back to you, O God, who gave them first to us. Yet as you did not lose them in giving, so do we not lose them by their return. Not as the world gives do you give, O lover of souls. What you give, you take not away, for what is yours is ours also, if we are yours. And life is eternal, and love is immortal, and death is only a horizon, and a horizon is nothing save the limit of our sight. Lift us up, strong Son of God, that we may see further. Cleanse our eyes, that we may see more clearly. Draw us closer to yourself, that we may know ourselves to be nearer to our loved ones who are with you. And while you prepare a place for us, prepare us also for that happy place, that where you are, we may be also forevermore.
Next, Chris Senior. First time I got an email from Chris Senior, it came in as Chris Kath. And it was when my mum passed away, and I thought it was a really strange, and as I quarter of the way through, I figured out it actually was Chris Kath Senior. So Chris Kath Senior needs no introduction. He's like his son, very pragmatic, and he's helped me personally tremendously deal with the grief.
Hello, everyone. Christian was born to Pepe and me on the 4th of May, 1980. I remember Dr. Cook, our doctor at the time, phoning me to tell me that Pepe had given birth to a healthy 10-plus pound son, which is about 4.6 plus kilograms. Pepe might know more accurately, and I remember it was 10-plus pound. Christian was the firstborn Kath son of his generation in our family, which I was very proud of at that time. What a gift. The following year, we, together with my 3 older brothers and their families, moved to a farm at Mandabra, where we lived and worked for the next 4 or 5 years. This was a great life for him, and Christian's first sister, Corrine, was born there in March 1982. They had a great time. One memorable highlight from there was when one night I took him along hare hunting. Christian, who was 3 or 4 at that time, fell asleep long before coming home, except when I tried to gently and carefully tuck him into bed, he jumped up and excitedly declared, "Mum, guess what? We shot a hare," before promptly falling asleep again. In October 1985, Christian was 5.5 years old then. Pepe and I, with Christian and Corrine, moved to Germany. Younger sister Lisa was born there in March 1986. I remember taking Christian to his first day at school in August 1986. He spoke no German and couldn't understand what was being said. He cried when the mayor's wife, who was there, gave all the children the gift of a poncho raincoat. And he, because he couldn't understand German, he misunderstood and thought that he would now would be asked to stand out in front of the whole class and model the damn thing. He never did like poncho raincoats after that. Christian did 2.5 years of school in Germany, learned to speak German fluently, of course, and was soon doing very well. In 1988, Pepe and I returned to Australia, and Christian continued school here. For a short time at Gympie South here, where I had gone to primary school myself, and where many years later Sheila taught for 17 years. However, we moved back to Mandabra, where he completed his primary school education at the small one-teacher Boynewood State School. Youngest brother Carl was born in January 1989 there. And Corrine, Lisa and Carl are all here, of course. Pepe and I separated not too long after, unfortunately, which was, of course, a difficult time for all of us. It was decided that the three younger ones, Corrine, Lisa and Carl, would live with their mother, Pepe, near Gympie, while Christian stayed on with me. He was close to his cousins, Heike, Nell, Jed and Robin, but of course did see Corrine, Lisa and Carl and his mum Pepe regularly. In June 1991, I met Sheila, who soon became a part of Christian's life too. Late in 1992, Sheila and I, with Christian, moved together into a house here at Dagan and then built our Glenbach family home. Sheila had little difficulty in building a warm relationship with Christian quickly, never trying to be his mum, yet always being the mother figure of the new three-person household. Early in 1993, Christian got his first little motorbike and then soon rode it through the forestry about 15 or 20 kilometres to the Woolworrell family farm. He was soon riding his bike to Woolworrell every Friday afternoon, staying there and playing with Otto and working for my dad on the farm for the weekend. Pups, we called our dad Pups. Pups made him work hard and he was soon picking pawpaws. By the time he was 16 or 17 years old in 1996 and 97, he was becoming a very good farm worker. Christian's daily pawpaw picking record, set late in 1997, was never beaten. Pups reckoned that Christian was made of better stuff than me, of which I was very proud. Christian topped the Gympie State High School's aptitude and ability exam in 1997, but finished school with only reasonably good results. He was far too busy being a naughty ratbag to do really well, like he should have. He gained entry to university, but took a year off first and went to Germany and Scotland, mostly in Germany. There he mostly lived with and worked for my brother, his uncle Alfred, building security fences and similar. He rode a bicycle, which his uncle John Adam had bought for him. He rode it from Germany through Holland, crossed the Channel by ferry, and through England and up to Scotland, where he visited Sheila's family. He then got a job at McDonald's in Edinburgh. He said that working here in McDonald's was where he first encountered a sophisticated systems business management approach. In 1999, Christian started a business course at Griffith University in Brisbane. Towards the end of that year, he decided that he might try to get a position as an army officer trainee. His chances of being selected were pretty low. About 750 people applied for the 20 positions for Queenslanders, many with extended Army Reserve experience or with completed university degrees. We were amazed when he was shortlisted, and then, lo and behold, he was given a place and his army training began. On the 17th of February 2001, after brutal and rigorous training and testing at Duntroon Military College, he passed and was given his officer's commission. Christian specifically asked to be sent to infantry, the foot sloggers, after that, as this was the most people-oriented part of the army. He was promptly given the position of commanding officer of the Gympie Army Reserve Platoon and base. Christian not only rose to the challenge, but was soon a widely respected leader in Gympie, Maryborough and Bundaberg. His army officer training and experience was quite significant in giving him the social aptitude and leadership abilities he became so well known for. Christian loved the outdoors, loved challenging himself physically, learned to play the guitar. He was far more proficient at guitar playing than I am, which is just as well, I can hear some of my musician friends here saying. He loved to play squash, tennis and other sports, read lots of books, and kept a good library of philosophical, social and literary classics and works. He discovered and pointed me and others to quite a number of important books and authors. In about 2002, after never quite completing his university studies, typical Christian, Christian got his first professional paid job as department supervisor or manager at the Kenilworth Cheese Factory. In about this year, he bought his first house, opposite the old railway station here in Dagan. Some locals thought he paid too much for it, but typical Christian, he sold it a few years later for more than double what he paid for it. Kenilworth Cheese Factory couldn't offer Christian quite the challenges he was seeking, and he finished up there and started as a department manager with the Super Bee at Tanua on the Sunshine Coast. After working there for only a year or two, the owner decided to promote him to the position of general manager. Christian at first resisted this, stating that he really did not feel he was quite ready or qualified enough for this yet. The owner reassured him that he would be able to handle it okay, and he, the owner, would be there to guide and assist him if necessary. But only a few months later, at the end of 2007, that owner sold the Super Bee to a buyer who had little knowledge about the industry or the business. What's more, he needed to relocate the business away from the Sunshine Coast. Christian, well supported by the new owner, of course, had to find and negotiate a premises with Forbes Shire Council in New South Wales and transfer the operation there. Amongst a lot of other things, Christian joined Rotary in Forbes, put forward the idea to build a skate park there, and was duly put in charge of having it built, as well as running the honey business, of course. Shortly before this time, a young woman called Misty Gardner, who was at that time the Queensland marketing manager for the cinema group Birch, Carroll and Coyle, had made contact with Christian at the Super Bee regarding making a foyer display on bees to promote the new Bee movie, which was about to be released. He and Misty became friends, and Misty decided that she wasn't going to let him go. They bought a house in Forbes. Misty got a senior position with the Forbes Shire Council, heading tourism and development, and Christian established and expanded the Super Bee honey operations. He was now general manager of one of Forbes' largest commercial operations. On the 19th of March 2010, they were married in a beautiful wedding celebration attended by many of you here and other friends at Twin Waters on the Sunshine Coast. The wedding venue was named Lily's, hence Lily's name when she was born prematurely on the 25th of October that year. Sheila and I remember that day very well as we rushed to Pindara Hospital in the night, fearing the worst for Misty and Lily, only to be so relieved when we saw them both. We instantly loved tiny Lily, and she really was tiny at that point, who was very much alive and making her presence known in her little Humie crib. Later in 2010, after Christian handed the Super Bee operation on to the next manager, they sold the house in Forbes and moved back to Queensland. He looked at some other options and then applied for a position as manager of the Queensland depot of Sterry Health. This promised to be a challenging job which he hoped he could fulfill okay. The HR officer, or they call her the Chief People Officer of Daniel's parent firm, was Jude Duff, who read the first poem here before, the Dash, and Jude has been a friend of ours and particularly Christian's ever since that day. She thought he looked like he might be able to fill the role okay and introduced him to Dan Daniels, our MC here today. And thus, Christian joined what was to become his third, or was it his fourth or fifth or sixth family. Dan liked and valued Christian from day one and became Christian's closest friend and senior mentor. In November 2012, Harper was born, and soon after, Christian and Misty moved to Sydney. Lily started prep, and Harper started kindy in Sydney. There, Christian took over the Sterry Health operation from Dan's mum. This was challenging and led to a deepening of the relationship with Daniels. As had become Christian's trademark, they not only fitted into the community well and performed very well at work, but formed deep, meaningful and lasting friendships and personal connections. Sheila and I will never forget the lovely big sweets hampers that Dan's mum prepared for us each time we drove to Sydney to visit Christian, Misty, and the girls as a thank you for giving her Christian. Bless her soul. When Steri Health was sold and later came under the umbrella of Cleanaway, the bond and friendship prevailed, and in December 2018, Christian, Misty, Lily, by then 8, and Harper, who was by then 6, left Australia and moved to Chicago in America, where Christian took up his new position with Daniels Health USA. In 2021, they moved from Chicago, Illinois, to St. Petersburg in Florida, where they lived in a nice house on the water in the same town as Dan and Laura. At each station in his life, Christian and Misty left deep and meaningful friendships, and some of you are here today to remember this. Thankfully, Sheila and I were able to visit them in Florida in March last year. What a lovely time we had there. We will continue to feast on the memories for the rest of our lives. We spent evenings together. We enjoyed days together in the backyard and at the waterfront. We had dinners together and engaged in productive conversations. We had Carl, Alex, and Fiona with us. We had my brother Vichtel from Ottawa in Canada with us for a few days. We drove around in Christian's Tesla. Family life there together was good. Sheila and I were able to take Lily and to take Harper out on outings. And I flew with Christian in that very plane. Dan, I want you to know that I and the Kath family are really thankful for Christian's and Misty's membership of the Daniels Health family. I'm calling it a family because you are. Some of you, in fact quite a few of you, have made a very long journey to be here with us today, which gives testament to the depths of your relations. I know Christian was much more than just a work colleague for you, and you contributed and became an integral part of Christian's and Misty's very successful and happy lives. Oh, that this could have continued for many more years. Christian's connection with me, but also with all people generally, was deep and meaningful. He listened to advice and opinion openly and humbly, and you always knew that he cared for you. He cared far more for the personal connection than for what might be in it for him. Christian grew up with and always lived by the motto that life is far more about what you can give than what you'll ever get. His life was about achievements and for people, his wife and family, but also his friends, family, business associates and staff. It was far, far more than it ever was about things, possessions, wealth, or affairs which were beyond his influence or control. Someone said to me that Christian was, a week or two ago, someone said that Christian was perhaps a little bit like Mozart, who died very early, but lived a full life and left a lasting legacy. This comforted me a little. But when I said this to someone else, they replied, "Oh yes, except that all Mozart did was left music. Christian achieved and has left us with much, much more than that." Christian will be very sorely missed by very many people for a very long time. May his legacy include bringing and holding us closer together. Thank you.
I'll talk a little bit about Christian's time with us at Daniels. Was an incredible time. I remember the first time Marcus and I met Christian. Jude had told us she found this incredible young man that she couldn't wait for us to meet. And within 5 or 10 minutes, Christian had this way of really winning your heart. You kind of known there was something really special about Christian from the first time you meet him. He had this incredible way about him. So he takes on the role coming from Super B, a food company, pretty well organized, very clean factory, to one of the worst plants we got in the world. The company before us had bought this business, and it was a temporary shed. So they bought a second-hand chicken shed. And that was the factory that Chris ended up with. So the holes had, the floors had holes in them everywhere. So, you've got the concrete floor, and you walk in, and if you're not careful, you could trip over from the number of holes you got. The ceiling had holes everywhere because when they re-put the shed in, they couldn't line up all the holes with the ceiling. So on a rainy day, you could actually get rain from the outside in the inside of the shed. Hygiene wasn't great. It was a worse plant. It was a mess. And Chris didn't know what he got himself into, so he thought maybe I could hang around here for a few months, I'll get another job. There wasn't any other jobs going around. But to Chris's credit, he's just an incredible character. He wanted to make the plant the best plant we got, even though it was really difficult. So he worked hard at it for 3 full years as a plant manager, only in the one plant. Every other operation manager I hired, 2 weeks later, he wanted a promotion, or she wanted a promotion. When I asked Chris to take on the next role, he said, no, I'm not ready. Then finally, when he got Queensland kind of half ready, we asked him, Sydney is our most challenging plant in the world. We had 45 trucks leaving out of 3 loading docks. So you had 45 trucks coming in and out, and you had to schedule each truck within half an hour or you couldn't get them out. You'd have a traffic jam in the street. The buildings were built in the 1940s and 50s, asbestos roof, plenty of problems, an incinerator that we used to get complaints from the neighbors and the EPA every week. No end of problem. And every time I meet Chris, he would only talk to me about the improvement they did. I know that he had 100 problems, but Chris would never share a problem. It's always, we did this, we did that. Then I told him, Chris, we really need a national operation manager. When you're ready, he said, I'll be ready another year. So it was 5 years before Chris could have done the national role from the first week. He was talented. He was pretty gifted. He was capable. He had this tenacity about him. He had everything, but he was also very patient, which is really, really rare to find in people. His ambition was more about doing the right thing and doing the right thing for other people. But once Chris got it, he was off like a hare, like he was off, like you couldn't stop him. Done. He's got that, he moved in the next thing. And when I asked him to come to the US to fix the mess that we've made in the US, Chris said, look, I'm not so sure. It's a really big job. Australia's only 3 cities and a couple of villages. America is massive. Like there's 50 major cities. I said, Chris, no, you could do it. And thought about it. He went on a holiday with Misty to Germany, had a good time away. And Jude and Chris are like another brother and sister. So Jude kept at him and kept talking him into it. He really wanted the role, but wasn't quite sure. But anyway, he made the decision and comes across to the US and started another chapter with Chris and Misty. I didn't know Misty as well till Misty came across to the US, and I made a decision to look at Florida. I remember Dean, our CFO, said, I have to have a house in Florida April 1 for our company structure. I had no intention of going to Florida. And Misty is one of the best project manager you've ever met in your life. So Misty did all the research on every city in Florida, where it is, prices, this, that, everything. And in one weekend, she went there, came back, or spent a few days and came back, and I ended up living in Florida because of the work that Misty did. And then moving on from that, I told Misty, why don't you get back in project management? You're really brilliant at it. So Misty was a little bit apprehensive to start with, but we ended up getting a few properties, and Misty ended up being incredible at refurbishing the properties, getting rented out, getting them sorted out, and her detail. When you get a project plan for Misty, it's every little detail. Then when Laura and I got married, I was talking to Misty. I said, Misty, would like to have a small party for just the senior the senior leadership team. There's about maybe 12 of us plus partners, so we might end up with 20, 24, 26 people all up at our house, and we need to put them up. And she said, she got so excited, and she rings me up and says, can I meet tomorrow about the party? So I said, okay, let's catch up tomorrow about the party. She comes in, and 4 hours later, we end up with 5 or 6 pages. I said, Misty, this is not a wedding planning event. We're just having a party. And then we end up with a band. She says, what type of band would you like? I said, I like jazz, maybe somebody on the sax, somebody on the piano, the big bass. So she found a saxophone player that used to play with Sting, that actually lived 15 minutes from us. And we had an incredible party. And then what ended up being one party for one day ended up a party over 3 days. So we had dinner the day before, then we had a piano player, then we had some lunch, and she had some caterers in. Then she talked Vivian, David's wife, into making us gnocchi, and that was the big event for the highlight of the meal. Then we moved on to at night into the band, and we finish up at midnight, and we come the next day for another lunch. And we had 3 incredible memorable days, and that's when I got to know Misty a lot deeper in a deeper, meaningful way, and I've begun to love and respect her incredible gift of piecing stuff together. And I got to see the other side of Christian because, Misty told me, I used to be jealous of you. I said, jealous of me? Why? She said, I thought Chris liked you more than me. I said, you got to be kidding. You're his wife. She says, we'd always talk about you and this and that and that. I said, you're just as talented as Chris. And that, made her feel great working on all the stuff we worked together. And then she grew to love Amy, got really close with Amy, and got close with really all a leadership team. And during COVID, we were locked up in Australia, but in America we were free. So what we decided to do, there was no one coming to the offices. And because nobody was coming to the offices, what we decided to do is we're going to work in another state every month or 2. So we got on our cars and we drove to Tennessee. We stayed in Smoky Mountain for about 2 weeks. And a bear broke into Nathan and Amy's house, an actual bear, and we had some incredible adventures. Then we ended up in Yellowstone, and Yellowstone for the first time ever was half empty. Like if you go to Yellowstone, you'd be stuck forever for the bisons to cross the road. And we had an incredible time at Yellowstone. Then we went to Montana, and then we went to Wisconsin. And we became really, really close as a family. So it's been really difficult for every Daniel's team member to actually deal with the loss. In the op meeting, while Daniel Gleason and Nathan were sharing, one of our op leaders is Jamaican fast bowler. Incredible op leader we have. And Sherlin was saying at the op meeting, he said, I haven't cried when my mum and dad passed away as much as I have for Chris. And I've only worked for Chris for 3 years. The impact Chris had on me in 3 years is like no one had on me on my life. And that's the kind of person Chris is. He was a tough leader. He would make the toughest decisions. Chris never made an easy decision. When we were discussing any topic, operation topic or any topic at work, Chris always picked the hardest way out and the toughest way through. And that was Chris. Yet he had a heart of gold to be able to deal with the tough issues, to push through a wall, and yet make people feel like they're the most important person in the world, because that's the heart that Chris has, and that's the heart that touches all of us. I'll pass it on to Lisa next. Okay.
Okay, hello. Dear Lily, first grandchild, first niece to Corrine, myself and Carl, older sister to Harper. Just after you were born, I had a phone call from your dad letting me know that you had arrived in this world. It was a very special moment, this call from my big brother. His caring voice, a little bit worried about you and your mum. So gentle and in awe, just like yourself. This was a beautiful moment I shared with my brother, and your life was a beautiful thing. I remember your small self, your big ears, your curly hair, your little nose. I remember holding your baby self on your veranda at Pimpama while you delighted looking at the leaves. I remember you using your first words, shoes and car in particular, and your dad telling me what you said one day when he took you to the beach. Hello, water. I think of this most times that I visit the beach. Your confidence as you grew was a joy to us all. Your strong body was incredible. Your gymnastics coach wrote to tell us this about you. Lily worked really hard for everything she accomplished, yet she was so genuinely excited when her teammates got skills she couldn't. Misty and Christian were amazing parents and incredible humans who knew how to value and enjoy simple moments. They had a quiet strength that could be felt across the room. You were intelligent also, and you were kind. You were sometimes annoyed. Perhaps you were also annoying, but I never knew it. In my eyes, you were nothing but incredible. Maybe that is the gift given to an auntie. Or maybe that is the gift given from a young girl, such as yourself, who sings silly songs about ducks and delights in pointing out that from the top of the staircase we can see both the sunset and the ocean, and that this is to be truly wondered at, and who likes to go on early morning beach walk escapades before her sister wakes up, and who joins her mum for baby chino dates, and who likes to eat red fish with her little shark teeth, and who holds another's hand so lightly and gently in hers. Lily, I will forever regret failing the opportunities I had to spend time with you. Lily, your auntie Corrine has asked me to say that you were our world and our heart. Your auntie Alex has asked me to say that she remembers the first time she met you, when you were a little curly-haired baby sitting on your high chair. She loved coming home at night to your house and have you crawling all over her and Carl on the sofa like a monkey, and to hear your cheeky laugh when you chased the dogs in your baby walker. The same beautiful niece that many years and many treasured memories later, she was sitting near the water one evening in Florida and found herself in awe by your words and your deep care about the tiniest living souls on this earth, about your humor and about your awareness. You said, "Thank you for sitting here with me." Lily, every second spent with you was a privilege. You and your loving hug will be dearly missed. Your Opa has asked me to pay respects to the journey of your life, the wonderful places you've lived, your beloved little sister Harper, all of your lovely schools, the way your mum homeschooled you during COVID, the fact that you were very accomplished at the things you did. Your granny Sheila has asked me to say that she treasured all the early morning chats and laughs you two had together when you hopped into Opa and her bed whenever they visited you or you came to stay with them. She loves that you shared messages and texts over the miles. These are all the more precious now. Your Nana Peppy has asked me to say that you were a miracle girl, being born preemie yet breathing on your own. She's glad that she told you she loved you the last time she saw you, and how touched she was by your response. She hopes you are resting gently with your mum and dad. Your godparents, Jenny and Mark, have asked me to say that they were proud of the beautiful young lady you were becoming and have fond memories of when you went to Forbes with your mum and dad for Easter. Your Granny Pen has asked me to say, Lily and Kath, my little mongoose, if roses grow in heaven, Lord, please pick a bunch for me. Place them in Lily's arms and tell her they're from me. Tell her that I love, tell her that I love and miss her, and when she turns to smile, place a kiss upon her cheek and hold her for a while. Because remembering her is easy, I do it every moment of the day. But there is an ache within my heart that will never go away. Thank you, Lily. Though we may remember you in many ways and all throughout our lives, at this moment we are asked to say goodbye.
Hi. Just have a little poem for Lily. Lily, you were the centre of our world, a granddaughter held so dear. But now that world is shattered and you are no longer here. But all you need to know today is how much joy you brought. You brightened every moment, though your life was far too short. You were loved completely from the day that you were born, and no one could imagine such a dreadful day would dawn. But memories are wonderful, and though they still bring pain, they give us hope and keep us strong until we meet again. I also have just a friend sent me this book. I don't know if you know it. It's called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse. And I just picked out one of the beautiful messages that I think is nice for us all. What do we do when our hearts hurt? Asked the boy. We wrap them with friendship, shared tears and time, till they wake, hopeful and happy again. Thank you.
We've got a whole bunch of tributes. So that we don't waste any time, I won't introduce them all. We'll be starting with Carl, Christian's brother, then Jared and Otto, Moppy and Heike, Andrew Kirby from the army. Daniel Gleason tried to get here. He travelled for a day and a half. His plane broke down and he couldn't get here, so Mike Maggia will deliver it on his behalf. Mike will deliver a message on behalf of the board. Simon Costa. Simon has been a mentor for Chris over the last 12 years. Simon will share something. David Skinner, Jenny Morrison have delivered a word which Amy will do on her behalf. And Harry will deliver another word, then Nathan Terrell, then I'll come and close.
So for anyone who doesn't know, I'm Christian's younger brother, Carl. And as with many things, I'm not quite the public speaker my brother was, but I'll give my best. Christian and I were never as close as we might have liked to have been. He was 9 years older and we grew up in separate households. Later in life, we were both so on the move that the geographical separation was even more of a problem. Even though I could dwell endlessly on the things that I wish we had done together, the things that I would have liked to have asked, and things I wish I had told him, by some miracle, we did, however, get to share some pivotal moments in our lives, and I would like to use this opportunity to reflect on a few of these. In 2007, our sister Lisa and I were both living on the Gold Coast, and even though we managed to live about 50 metres apart and never see each other for months at a time, one day Christian was in town, and we had arranged to catch up for a drink before Christian met someone for a date. At the time, he was working at the Super Bee, and through a promotional collaboration for the launch of the Bee movie, he had met a lady called Misty. Wait till you meet this one, bro. She's stunning. I can still remember how excited he was at the time. I'm sure if he'd known this was going to be his future wife and the mother of his children, he would have been a lot more anxious. I was later honoured that Christian asked me to be one of his groomsmen and was able to stand by his side at his wedding. Well, we all love Misty, as anyone would. She wasn't quite what we expected Christian to bring home in those days, but we all warmed to her very quickly. Gandhi once said, "A man is but the product of his thoughts. What he thinks, he becomes." I think he might have been a little bit more accurate in saying, "A man is but the product of his wife. What she thinks, he becomes." And Misty surely played a big part in determining how their life played on from then on. Not only was she beautiful, kind-hearted, and a funny woman, she was an amazing mother, but she was tough and had a lively intellect. She's probably looking down at me now saying, "Yeah, a more extensive vocabulary would have done this speech some good." Well, Misty, I'm just not going to have to accept that I'm probably not going to be able to give you a literary justice, but I would still like to say that you are simply the best sister-in-law I could have ever wished for, and we all love you dearly. Your livelihood, your critical humour, your big smile, and your cheerful character will be sorely missed. My wife and I had the privilege of living with Christian and Misty for 3 months in 2011, just after Lily was born. Even as a little baby, Lily was such a pleasant disposition that any troubles you had would just fade away in her presence. In this time, we were able to bond closely and build a connection that has transcended the physical distance and our long periods of absence throughout Lily's life. She and Harper were later flower girls at our wedding, and Christian, of course, my best man. In 2019, we visited them in Chicago, and it was there we chose my daughter's name, Fiona. Although we had a distant relationship, the times we had together were always really intense. We would take the time to enjoy each other's company and do things together. So in such a short period, we generated rich memories that I will cherish forever, from dancing at the blues bar to getting Christian and Misty hooked on a silly American TV show. From then it was over 3 years until we had the joy of visiting them again, this time in Florida. For this visit, I'm especially thankful, for it was the only time that Christian, Misty, and Lily were able to meet Fiona, their only niece and cousin. Even little Fiona, with her 3 years, could not help but love them to bits. It still warms my heart to remember how easily and naturally she accepted everyone, like the extended family she had always been waiting for. Lily on this visit was especially active, in waking up at 4 a.m. in the morning to play with Fiona and I while we were still on a different clock. She was always so pleasant, kind, and loving. Alexandra and I had already started counting down the years until Lily would finally be old enough to come and stay with us in the summer holidays or for an exchange year. We could spend more time with her. She was well on her way to becoming such a beautiful, kind, and loving woman that I'm sure everyone that knew her will be distraught at her loss. Lily, you came too early and you left us much too early. Your passing has left a void in our hearts that will never be refilled. Being the oldest, Christian had to cut his own path. His life wasn't always easy, and he definitely didn't get everything handed to him. But somehow, he just found a way to jump from success to success. Not only was he financially successful, but socially too. He could hold his own with any of the country boys, was intelligent and composed enough that high society accepted him as one of their own. He could work as hard or harder than the next man, but also knew his worth and didn't let anyone get the better of him. He was caring and inclusive, and his humour and witty character made him popular in all walks of life. I always looked up to and envied Christian. Like a cyclist in a race, I have in a way been following him my entire life, using his wind shadow to maintain speed. I never stood a chance of catching up. He was always miles ahead, but if I was ever in doubt about where to go in life, I always knew where to look for inspiration or advice. Throughout my entire life, I can't think of a single time when he made me feel anything but respected, loved, and supported. It's true that you can never quite appreciate things until they're gone, and it's only now that I realise that I have lost not only a brother, but my lifelong mentor and hero. Years ago, Christian sent me a gift, one of his favourite books each month for a year, and I would like to leave you with a quote from one of these books, Wind, Sand and Stars by Anton Saint-Exupéry. Nothing, in truth, can replace a lost companion. Old comrades cannot be manufactured. There's nothing that can equal the treasure of so many shared memories, so many bad times endured, so many quarrels, reconciliation, and heartfelt impulses. Friendships like that cannot be reconstructed. If you plant an oak, you will hope in vain to soon sit in its shade. For such is life. We grow rich as we plant through the early years, but then come the years when time undoes our work and cuts down our trees. And one by one, our comrades deprive us of their shade. Within our mourning, we always feel the secret grief of growing old. Thank you.
G'day, I'm Jed, this is Otto. Chris was a cousin of ours. I'm not big on public speaking, so I won't keep you very long. He's got the typical Kath mouth, so he'll probably be a bit longer. I just wanted to share probably my first memory of Chris. We grew up together. He was like a brother to me. We lived together for a few years, and very early on, would have been about 7 or 8 years old. one of my earliest memories. We were playing touch footy in the front yard, and he tagged me once too many times, and I threw a tantrum, turned around and smacked him in the mouth and ran away. Spent the afternoon hiding in my room and trying to think about how I could apologise and get him to forgive me for it. And next morning before breakfast, he rocks up. The first thing he said, "Oh, sorry about making you angry yesterday. Can we just forget about that?" And that to me is just Chris. He was more interested in the relationship than in being right. He didn't care about being right or wrong. He'd rather apologise than stand his ground on things like that. That's it.
Indeed, Jed's story exemplifies the person that he was. In fact, it occurred to me that in the many years we were like brothers, I can't recall of a single quarrel or conflict that I had with him. The diversity of people here is a testament to Christians' ability to connect and empathise with an extremely wide variety of person. He had an extraordinary talent, it's already been mentioned a number of times, for making people feel at ease and connecting with them. In any given interaction, he would be really engaging, genuinely curious, and in a word, really present. I think that most people sense this intuitively with him. Very quickly, you would have a sense that in the place, in most of our hearts, reserved for such things as malice, pride, vengeance, and contempt, he only filled with more understanding and empathy. This isn't to say that he wouldn't be opposing in ideas or bringing new concepts to the conversation, far from it. Being well read, he would constantly challenge your ideas and bring a balanced perspective. He just had the unique ability to do it while at the same time making you feel completely at ease with the idea that you might be wrong. And yet, despite this unique talent and ability to absorb a wide variety of perspective, he never allowed this to derail his own goals and ambitions. He had an enormous level of courage combined with self-discipline. This obviously created the conditions for him to achieve the wide variety of extraordinary accomplishments that wherever he set his mind to them. He was somewhat of a great leader. In the last month or so, I've been lamenting the fact that Christian and I had created some distance between us over the last 10 years or so. It only occurs to me just now that not only is that okay, but in a large part due to the fact that while he was extremely engaging, he would refrain from inserting himself into the lives of others around him. To circle back to Jed's anecdote, I take some comfort, or maybe discomfort, in the idea that if he was here now, he would be quick to apologise for the inconvenience that he's brought us all. And with that, thank you. Thank you.
Hey, who are you? I'm Heiki, Christian's cousin. Who are you? I'm Muppy. I'm Christian's cousin also. And there's another cousin, another cousin, another cousin, another cousin. Yeah, there's quite
Cousin there?
Yeah, and about 40 of them over in Germany, Canada on video link. We just wanted to speak a little bit on behalf of our generation of cousins. And There are a lot of us.
Yes. Consulted the various family tree experts, thanks Annalisa, and my mum. I think we're somewhere between 72 cousins up to maybe 99 if you count the cousins removed or
Once
half
removed.
cousins or something. So there's a lot of us.
Quite a lot of us. So you're in the cousins chat group?
What's up? What's up?
That Nell started in 2016. Needless to say, it gets rather busy at times. Do you remember one of the early chats? I see that Christian wrote, "Interesting chat, cousins. However, I'm in a meeting and last week you're all very distracting with the vibrating messages going off. However, whilst we are speaking of nostalgia," and then he had 3 pages full of message, ending rant over.
He is good at that. Yeah, the cousin chat definitely gives us a lot of ability to chat and reminisce.
Like the times at Kopayunga when we were pretending to ride camels, chasing Arabs. I think Christian's favourite noble steed was Winston, or was
Cecil.
it Cecil?
Riding bikes around the farm, including Christian's memorable zoom down the giant hill, landing face first and having to drink through a straw for the next week.
And Nell's 30th in Melbourne. Gosh, there was a lot of us there and we hit the dance floor. I'm pretty sure everybody else vacated. It was pretty much us only there.
Sharing our favourite pups, titbits and pearls of wisdom. We all have many of those.
Indeed. And I definitely remember a fair few of us clubbing at Gympie one night and we had to get a maxi taxi back with glow sticks that we just sprayed all around the maxi taxi and had our own private clubbing home all the way to his place in Dagan.
Oh, when he lived in Dagan. And there was a lot of...
But he was always up for creating new memories with cousins, always had time for all of us. Only a few months ago, he's been in contact with Sina, a cousin he hadn't yet met in passing, but was making new connections still. Oh, what about the wedding? There was so much of us there. It was just wonderful to get to meet his partner, a very perfect partner in Misty, tribute to who Christian was, and we had such fun. She was so welcoming to our very large Rambly family, and particularly so many cousins.
She was. So many of us would have visited them at Forbes, Sydney, Gold Coast, Brisbane. She even attempted a family tree, which I think you have a photo of, of our complex family for her girls. And yeah, I remember meeting Lily when she was just a little baby, just come home from the nursery at Pimpama. Yeah.
I'm very proud to say that I was definitely the closest of all the cousins to Christian. He told me afterwards that he had purposefully went AWOL with the army one weekend and got court-martialed so that he could come to my wedding when they denied him the weekend off, saying I wasn't close enough.
No. Me and my siblings spent all our time together as young children and came back from Germany. Very formative years, teenage years.
No. I actually have to say as well that my sister Giddy, she's the godmother of Harper, and they spent a lot of time together. Just in the last visit, they went particularly and saw Giddy's concert, and with the girls, I had a beautiful time.
Well, I would say early memories burn the brightest, and the German cousins had heaps of time with Christian when they were really young, and then in Germany again.
You do know what this means.
That Christian's competitive streak is a Kath genetic trait?
No, not that.
Oh, we're quite an eclectic, eccentric, rambling family.
No, well, yes, but no. What it does mean is that each one of us felt particularly close. It was a very unique quality of Christian that made us all feel very part of his life, and he in each of ours.
And you know what else it means?
Yeah, I know, we know together. It means for Penny, John, Harper, Chris, Sheila, Peppy, and our fellow cousins Carl, Corrine and Lisa, that you have a very large cousin group here and abroad, in Germany and Canada and all around the place, in New Zealand, that you are here to talk with you.
We're good at that.
And listen to you, help, love and support in any way.
Christian, Misty and Lily, our very large cousin group will keep your memory burning bright. And for Harper, all around the world. Thank you.
We leave you with a lovely quote directly from Christian. These are Christian's words in our chat group. He wrote a few years ago, Nostalgia sometimes makes the things we miss seem overly unattainable and lost to us now, whereas often they are just a small step away.
Christian, Misty and Lily, all your cousins will keep you all a small step away.
Usually, you don't realise you've made a lifelong friend the moment that you meet someone. But the first time that a very confident, chaotic and charismatic young lieutenant joined me in the battalion 20 years and some 10 months ago, I realised instantly that we would be lifelong friends. When Chris Senior asked me to share some recollections of Chris's time in the army, which was a large part of his life, I was making some notes, and I realised that Chris so ably recounted the facts of Chris's career that all I could do was share some of the experience, and what an experience it was to serve with Chris. And the two words that define, I think, the young lieutenant that I knew were irreverence and integrity. We had a rather difficult, some would say tyrannical company commander, and as two rather undisciplined young officers were always in trouble. And I remember being in an orders group out in the field under quite a bit of pressure. And as the most junior officer, Chris was seated immediately to this company commander's side, so he couldn't see him. And every time we came around the group to me and I was asked a very difficult or probing question, Chris would introduce me to a face that I came to know as the galah. I cannot do tribute to the contortions that Chris would bring to his face. The first time he did it, I got a beration and lost my place. The second time he pulled that face in that orders group, I started to giggle. By the third time he did it, I was in fits of laughter, getting an absolute dressing down. And of course, when I said, "But sir, Lieutenant Kath is pulling faces," Chris looked up with that innocent butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. "Sorry, sir, I was just taking notes, sir." And of course, it all fell upon me. Chris would introduce that face to me at every significant solemn event that we shared together. Anzac Day parades in Gympie and Nambour, formal ceremonies, travelling in the field at Wide Bay, Shoalwater Bay, in and out of the back of armoured personnel carriers. When Chris was groomsman at our wedding, he pulled that face while I was at the altar. When I was MC at Misty and Chris's wedding some years later, in a very important part of the service, of course, there is Chris pulling that face. Every time I had to stand up and do something significant, Chris would try and put me off my game. And I know that if Chris was here today, he'd be sitting somewhere right now, pulling the galah and then denying it furiously. The other attribute that that young officer had was a significant amount of integrity, something he always attributed to his upbringing with his dad, Chris. Chris deployed to Malaysia, the jungles of Malaysia, at a very junior and young age, where he was over there for a number of months. And partway through that tour, he found himself in a very extreme and dangerous situation. There was a raging fire, a lot of unexploded ordnance, and Chris received some orders that he knew were wrong and were going to put his soldiers, the 30 men under his command, at significant risk. And an act of extreme moral courage, Chris stood up and said, "No, I'm not sending my soldiers forward into that danger zone. It is unacceptable." At the risk to his reputation, to his rank, and even to his continued career in the army, Chris was willing to take an incredible moral stand. Some months and many investigations later back in Australia, Chris was absolutely validated and continued on with his career for a number of years. I didn't realise just how affected he had been by that until he was around at our place for dinner one night. And my wife suggested going to our local Asian restaurant and said, "Chris, how do you feel about the Malaysian experience?" He turned absolutely white, started sweating, and his heart went to about 180 degrees until I explained it was just a restaurant. But that sense of irreverence and integrity, somebody who was likeable and respected, is the same approach that took to his time in the army, to his marriage to Misty, and to raising Lily and Harper. And I know everybody here will agree that the world could use a little more of that irreverence and integrity right now.
My name's Mike Magyar. Sorry. My name's Mike Magyar. I'm one of the board members. We've also got John Dwight and his lovely wife Melinda here. John is also a board member. And it's our delight to be able to be in attendance for this memorial service, which I think will bring much healing and also a lot of comfort to everybody present as they are all sharing their lens of impact and influence that Chris has brought to their lives. On behalf of the Daniels board, I wish to express to the families our deepest condolences and heartfelt sympathies, and pray that God's comfort be the portion and his healing be that portion for you today. I'm also here to represent Daniel Gleeson, who unfortunately couldn't make this meeting, not for want of trying. The airlines got quite confused and his bags and all of the flights were delayed. He's in San Francisco and I am honoured to be able to share on his behalf. Just before I do, we're all sharing some reflections on Chris, and possibly one of the recollections that I have of Chris is in his leadership. There was one thing that stood out to me about Chris, and we know a lot about leaders, that leaders can lead, but it's always determined by the hallmark of their life, by how many follow. And his ability to bring inspiration to people and then delegate tasks and responsibilities second to none. He had also the ability to be very objective and pragmatic in outcomes, but being able to bring others into the synergy of outcome by his leadership through inspiration. And one of the inspirations that I've seen that Chris has been able to manifest is in the life of Daniel Gleeson. Daniel worked closely with him, and as Dan had shared, Chris was excited that Daniel would come with him to the US and help with the enormity of the task that was before the Daniel's health. So on behalf of Daniel Gleeson, I'd like to just share some of his thoughts. Most people go their entire lives without a blessing like Chris, but I was one of the lucky ones. Chris was my manager for the past 10 years, a mentor for the past 8, a father figure for the past 5, a friend for the past 4, and I've been proud to call him my best friend ever since. The fact that he could wear all those hats at once is a true testament to what an incredible person Chris was. In a single day, he could coach me on a work problem, lose a game of chess, tell me to man up whilst texting a selfie eating a pie, showing true and genuine compassion to others. This ability he had to connect with us deeply and genuinely on so many different levels was something that made him so special to us all. To those he managed, he was more than just a manager. To those that called him friend, we knew that he would have jumped through many hoops for us. He was just so damn intelligent without being weird and nerdy. It always felt like he had the right answer to any problem. And I'm sure that his decision making and advice helped all of us through the moments of doubt and uncertainty. Chris, you made more of a positive impact on my life than I could ever describe in words, and truly shaped the person who I am today. You are my guiding light, and I honestly don't know what I'm going to do without you. But I know that if I can be half the person that you were, I'll make you proud. Rest in peace knowing that you are loved by all, and we will never forget you. My deepest condolences to the family. May your memories give you peace and comfort during this challenging time, Daniel Gleeson. Thank you.
We've heard so many lovely words about the loss of these three beautiful people today. I'd like to spend a few minutes and speak less about the person and speak more about the leader, one of the rarest commodities that there are in life, a true leader, a leader that we've now lost. Chris was generous, he was talented, and as Mike just mentioned, he was an inspiring leader. Although it's 10 years since I worked directly with Chris, we've maintained a relationship over those years as a friend and a mentor. And our last communication was on the afternoon that we lost Chris. But rather than speak to you about my thoughts about Chris, I wanted to share with you the feedback from his peers. Last year I spent time interviewing 12 of the senior managers of the Daniels organisation, and the objective was to understand ways that we could help Chris become a better leader. And I asked each of the managers to be as honest and as tough as they could be. We would be doing Chris no favours by sugarcoating the feedback. Let's give it to him hard and let's see how he responds. But what I didn't anticipate was the level of admiration that this young man had already achieved amongst his peers. And it was not just in one region. This was across the UK, Canada, America, and Australia. And I hope, as Chris is looking down, he doesn't mind me sharing the confidentialities. This is professionally incorrect on so many levels, but I'm gonna share with you some of the feedback. And the first question that I opened with, I asked each of these people, before we talk about Chris as a manager, talk to me about Chris, how would you describe your relationship with Chris? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the quality of your relationship? The average score that Chris received across those 12 people was 9 out of 10. Now that's unheard of. That's 12 very hard professional people who are giving this individual 9 out of 10 as an average. So you can imagine amongst there was quite a few 10s out of 10. And some of the reasons that were provided for this extraordinarily high rating, there were some consistent themes. And some of the comments were, I have the highest level of trust in Chris. I can always be transparent with Chris. He listens to me. He's thoughtful. He genuinely cares for me and for others. We have a friendship that goes beyond business. We clash and he challenges me, but I have absolute trust in him. I love my job, and a big factor for that is how much I enjoy working with Chris. He's direct, he's honest, he's courageous. He's an incredible person, and his character is a role model for all of us. Now, it sounds more like a fan club than 12 hardened professionals providing critical feedback. But some of the other comments about Chris I just wanted to share with you briefly. He's confident, but he's also humble. He was strategic, he was collaborative. He always had too much on his plate, but somehow he managed to find extra time to help others. And Dan has shared some wonderful stories recently about examples of people that didn't even work in Chris's area, but he found time to support and help them. He was passionate, he was patient and supportive, and he was decisive. He could be quite fearless in terms of going after not necessarily what he wanted to do, but what needed to be done. And he was awesome around conflict. Chris truly was an inspiring leader. And I could go on, but I think the quote that I'd like to leave you with that probably best illustrates Chris as a leader, a statement made by one of his peers that said, Chris has the wonderful ability to get that extra out of everyone. He can get a 5 out of 10 to perform and operate as an 8 out of 10. And in a world that desperately needs strong leadership, we've sadly lost a champion in Chris. Thank you.
Afternoon all. I very rarely use notes, but I need to today, so bear with me. It's 10 years ago I first met Chris down at Silverwater when he took over the unenviable role of managing that plant from Dan Daniel's mother, Eva. And trust me, if you ever walked through that plant and you did something wrong, you knew you did it wrong real quick. And Chris followed up that trait. But he's a genuine, as Simon said, he genuinely had an interest in others, and that's the first thing you saw when you met the guy. And it was just amazing how that happened. I'm honoured that I spent so long with him in the US. In fact, probably more with him than my wife, but anyway, we're still married. I can also attest to Misty's project management skills, because we're pretty part-hardies, but she almost wore us out in those 3 days, honestly. And again, my wife cooked for 32 people, and again, we're still married, so there must be something going on there. You know what the actual measure of success of a good marriage is? You live in another country, and so that's what I've been able to succeed with for some time. As for Chris, he was not only a colleague, but as many of you have said, he was a mentor, he was a friend, he was a confidant, he was someone that you could trust implicitly no matter what you wanted. He was supportive. One of our sales ladies started, and he sent her a list of things that he thought she should focus on in her new career. He'd never met the lady, and yet she's now one of our most successful salespeople. But that's the sort of individual this guy was, just went out of his way to help other people. He had a great sense of humour. He's also someone that made work enjoyable yet challenging, and I think the challenging part that he put to his team and the organisation in general to grow and improve is really a testimony to it. He certainly is highly competitive, I'll attest to that. We used to compete in a lot of things, and the results and impact that he had on Daniels in Australia and in the US are there clearly for everyone to see. In the US, prior to Chris starting, we actually did some surveys through consultants to tell us what we were doing right and what we were not doing as well. What we were doing right is we had great people, great product. Some of the other things that weren't so good, Chris came in and actually made those competitive advantages for us. Today, our service is the best in the industry, right across the board. Right? We now onboard customers, the best. We implement things, the best. And that's stuff that Chris brought to our organisation that just was not there before. And that's something that, like, trust me, I've been there for 21 years. I've seen the good and the bad. And he actually absolutely changed the way we did business. He'll certainly be missed, but his legacy will go on with the team and the organisation that he's built. He's got an amazing team around him, and they've certainly come to the party in the last month. And certainly he's direct and blunt. I think as many of you who know him will say that. And I've sat in meetings where he said to certain of our suppliers, "That's not going to bloody fly, mate." Well, for the average American, when you say that, they don't know what to say back. Yet he did it in such a way that they actually liked him when they walked out the door. And we got the deal that we wanted to get. And so that's a real testimony to the way that he is. And it's a style, I think, that we trust and we hope we can emulate in the business as we move forward. Our weekly management meetings used to be shared by Chris, and we'd start off with anything on fire, key achievements, anything that we needed to actually talk about that was important. Choppy, let's move on. And one of the things he'd end with was a dad joke. Ask someone for a dad joke. Generally, that was me. So one of my favourites is, why did the 9-volt battery get asked to leave the church? Because they were having a AA meeting in the church. I'll leave you with one saying that I saw when I was looking at something to write down, and that is, don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. And I think Chris will live in our hearts for a long, long time. And so I think if we all remember that, we'll all be in a great place as we move forward. Thank you.
All right, I'm reading this on behalf of Jenny Morrison, who was one of Misty's very best friends. Misty was my very best friend in the world, my constant, my forever friend, my North Star. My heart and soul will never recover from the loss of her in this world. We've been friends for as long as I can remember, bonded tightly from working intimately together at the V8 supercars. We worked together for a year, but that was all it took for our bond to forge, and we've been emotionally inseparable ever since. This is tricky to articulate because a great deal of our friendship has been spent in different cities. states, and countries. Despite the distance, we are each other's person, and our connection was strong. We didn't talk every day. Sometimes we didn't speak for months at a time, but we knew each other was always there. We were each other's close counsel, the one we would always rely on for honesty and a balanced point of view. We were as different as can be, but fit together perfectly. I felt her in the world and in my soul. I feel her loss now, and the weight of it is mighty. The last time I saw my beloved friend, we were talking excitedly about the return to Australia in June. I was counting down the months, weeks, days to all the memories our families would resume when we were back together again. In the same country, in the same state. I'm not sure how to breathe in a world where Misty no longer does. I thank God for all the wonderful memories we were able to make. We went through everything together, bridesmaids at each other's weddings, the births of our babies, loads of adventures, devastating lows, exhilarating highs, and every emotion in between. She called me out more than once, and in doing so made me a better person. How very blessed I am, how very blessed we all are to have been touched by a wonderful lady, daughter, daughter-in-law, soul, sister, wife, mother, and friend. I recently read a quote that said, "Girl, when you find a sister in someone who is not blood, keep her," and that's what we did.
These are the words of Vlasta, who was Lily's gymnastic coach. It's truly an honour to have this opportunity to be part of the celebration of life for Christian, Misty and Lily. And it is especially an honour to be invited to share some words about who Lily was. In Chicago, I was Lily's gymnastics coach. Especially when younger teammates were around, like a big sister, she loved to help me out to play along with story time. The story I will tell you today is the story of the last time I saw Lily. My family and I travelled to St. Petersburg last spring, me, my husband Matt, and our son Dwayne. While in the backyard of their beautiful home, Christian was trying to teach Matt the proper way of getting a coconut out of a tree. Don't ask. Misty was making amazing cocktails, and the kids, Dwayne, Lily, and Harper, were playing outside. Down by the dock, Lily noticed a snail near the edge, and this began an almost 45-minute saga of what to do about this snail. Because Lily was scared that the snail would fall into the water and drown. And as much as Lily wanted to get the snail away from the water, at the time she did not want to pick it up because she wanted to respect the snail's freedom of choice. The team of three, Lily, Harper, and Dwayne, had tried it all, from tapping in the direction of the water to forming a path of sticks. And then, finally, the snail decided to move its way onto one of the leaves that Lily placed strategically in front of it. Lily and the gang then carried the snail to the grass and spent some time building it a home. When Misty heard about this adventure, she wondered out loud, "Well, Lily, what if it's a water snail?" With a gasp and a look of fear in her eyes, Lily immediately started working towards getting the snail back to exactly where she'd found it. You know, I go back and forth deciding whether I'm a religious or spiritual person or not. But what I do know for sure is that it feels incredibly unfair that life or the universe or whatever did not show Lily 1% of the grace, kindness, and mercy that she showed that snail. Lily was intelligent beyond her years, compassionate beyond her years, thoughtful, genuine, loving, and kind, as was the rest of her family. To the point that, in a way, this almost makes sense. It almost makes sense that they were too good for this world. If there are angels, there is no doubt in my mind that 3 of them are Lily and her parents. And Harper, who was chosen to be strong enough not only to continue to carry her own magical light of patience, love, and courageousness, but is also left to continue to represent those 3 powerful spirits in this world. Harper, know that whether you will remember us or not as you get older, My family and I, Vlasta, Matt and Dwayne, will always remember you, and you will always have friends in Chicago who will be here to care for you and protect you if you ever decide to visit. You are loved and you are an inspiration. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nathan, and it's my genuine privilege to share some reflections and honour our dearly loved friends. My wife, Amy, myself, and my 3 children have been blessed to share our lives with Chris, Misty, Lily and Harper following our connection through employment at Daniels Health. I worked with Chris for the past 7.5 years, and following their family relocation to Chicago in late 2018, and after much enthusiastic persuasion and encouragement by Chris, 12 months later, we also relocated to the US to join them. This resulted in Misty and Amy developing a friendship through, among other things, the shared experience of taking the bold step to leave family, friends, and everything known behind and relocate internationally in support of Chris and my careers at Daniels. Over the next 3 years, as Dan mentioned, we shared family adventures exploring the US, which included bushwalks and hikes, punctuated by Lily and my second son Joshua, discussing ad nauseum the philosophy and virtues of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, a fantasy novel series for those not familiar. And Chris and I built a precious friendship founded on our mutual respect for each other, a childish appreciation of belly laughs and air drumming to classic Aussie rock songs, and our shared love for our colleagues at Daniels, our Daniels family, and what we were building together. As we've already heard today, Chris had so many incredible qualities, and there's so much I could talk to, but as I reflected, there's one thing I kept coming back to, and it's this. Chris made me uncomfortable. As strange as it may sound, this is one of the things I value and respect about him the most. Chris had the courage to speak uncomfortable truths, to call things out, to hold me accountable, to not settle and accept mediocrity or inadequate excuses, to speak what might be difficult to hear, but what was needed for growth. And this is not just true for me. I sat in many a meeting where Chris would ask the awkward question, or dive straight into the issue that others were hoping would be avoided. And it was mostly fun to watch, except when you were the subject. But what motivated him was his passionate belief that we could be better, collectively and individually, and he held himself to the same standard. Chris called out what he saw in people and in their potential. He got no greater joy than seeing people, his colleagues, his team, step up and grow in their leadership, their capacity, and in their own self-belief. And he would share with great pride the achievements of his team, particularly when it demonstrated their own personal growth. There's a proverb that says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." And for me, that's Chris. I stand here today as a better professional, a better leader, and a better person because Chris had the courage to speak what might be uncomfortable, but what he knew would make me grow. And I know that's true for so many of you here and those also watching online. Chris, my dear friend, I am so grateful for having had you in my life. You are someone I measured myself against and will continue to measure myself against. And while I desperately wish this wasn't goodbye, it is my honour to carry forward your legacy and live out what you have shaped and sharpened in me. Thank you.
What an incredible couple of hours we had together. And many, many wonderful stories and many wonderful memories. Okay? Yeah. Good, thank you. We'll do it after course. Okay. Just in closing, it's very difficult to say goodbye. It's very difficult to understand that I won't get another hug from Lily. I won't be able to pick up the phone and talk to Chris. I won't get Misty to plan my next party. But their memory will live on in our hearts and our meetings and what we do. The legacy will continue. And as like David Skinner have said, over the last month, everybody stepped up and wanted to make Chris and Misty proud of the legacy they leave behind. In closing, we're going to invite you for some refreshment and snacks at the back. Some wines will be served at the bar, food and drink at the veranda. And after a short interval, we'll call you back together for the Army Poppy service in Christian's memory. This will be held in the grass area, and we'll call you for that. And after, we will conclude the formal service and release the butterflies in honour of Lily. Getty will do that. Harper's grandmother will be releasing 12 butterflies to mark Lily's 12 years of life. So we invite all the children together with Getty to release the butterflies. We'd once again like to thank everybody that make an incredible effort. I've got a list of 55 people that contributed to this service today, from food to video to the venue, flowers. I could go on. Nathan went from New Zealand all the way to the US to drop her 3 kids and come all the way back to Australia again for the service. Amy left her 3 children in Chicago so she could come and be here for the event. Many of you have travelled New Zealand, Northern Queensland. Matt had driven for 12 hours across the country to get here. Many of you have contributed. I'd just like to thank you for honouring Chris, Misty and Lily's memory. Thank you.
up if they're going to go in there. I'll run the cable if you
Hello, if I could just have your attention for a moment, please. I hope you've all had a drink and enjoying some of the fresh air out here. First of all, I want to say thank you all for coming and making such a lovely service. We're now going to do Christian was lieutenant in charge of the Gympie Army Platoon, and we're going to do an Army poppy service. So if I could hand you over to Rex here to do the poppy service. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. My name's Rex Brennick. I'm an advocate from the Mary Valley RSL out here in the Mary Valley. Okay, this is what we call a modified poppy service. And normally we would have Chris's military eulogy. But typical military, they decided we can't have it this time. Yes, and Chris would have his galah face on because he would understand exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so what I do have, and Chris being part of his other family, the military family, I have a few details which you've probably heard most of them today actually. So I'll start with his Lieutenant Chris Kath, Army number 1813301. He was part of 9 Royal Queensland Regiment, where he qualified at the Queensland University in 99 to 2000 as a first lieutenant. He was then sent to 9RQR Gympie, where he was the platoon commander, and I believe he'd done a pretty good job there, what I'm hearing. Now, he was there to 2005. Now, while he was there, he was also deployed to the Rifle Company in Butterworth in 2002, which I know you did hear a little bit of a story about that, so it's all good. Okie dokie. So normally I would read out his eulogy. Well, I don't have that now. So what I have is, I have a modified poppy service. We have members from the military here. We have representatives from the Military Brotherhood, the Mary Valley RSL, 9RQR. O valiant hearts who to your glory came, through dust of conflict and through battle flame. Tranquil you lie, your nightly vigil proved, your memory hallowed, and the land you loved. The hour has come for rest. This poppy, an emblem of sacrifice, the symbol of life given in the service of one's country, is a link between our comrades and us who remained. We place it here in remembrance. Okay, I will now recite the ode. They shall grow not old, but who at last grows old, age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down in the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them,
Lest we forget.
lest we forget.
thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If you'd like to grab a poppy and place it up here in a bit of remembrance. And once again, thank you very much for allowing us to come and be part of your ceremony today. Thank you.
Nah, that's the first thing I thought looking at the picture. Spartan accused me in what age? All European blood.
German sausage.
Right next to cheesy surrender money.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Just one quick one. Could I get Chris Senior, please come forward? Okay, also part of our poppy service, we also present the Australian flag to the next of kin. Okie dokie.
I've got such a big voice, I don't normally need a mic. When I play with a country music crowd or with a gusto crowd in there, they've got one of those mics that works in reverse because they reckon Chris is so loud. They get one of those mics that quietens me down a little bit. I don't know what to say. I'm blown away. I feel really honoured. I know how many of you have come an awfully long way and taken a day out of a big schedule. Not many of you who are here who would otherwise have been sitting around at home. I really, really, I'm honoured. I feel proud. I'm bursting with pride, and I'm bursting with pain. Thank you all. Thanks for coming.